We are at the quarter point of the Phoenix Suns season, and you know what that means. It is time for report cards. We'll go through the entire roster, maybe even hit a coach or two. All of that coming up right away on Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon, Kleen, covering the Suns the past 5 seasons as a credentialed media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen every single day. We are everywhere: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and of course on our brand new YouTube channel as well. The best way to keep us going, to keep us free, most importantly, is to just continue to listen like you are already doing. So thank you for doing that. And we have a lot to talk about today. As I said, player grades, report cards for the Suns rotation players. Damon Allred of Bright Side of the Sun is here to do that with us. Before we get into that, though, Damon, I have to, again, go back to this giveaway because I can't seem to get it right. I picked a person who lives in Australia, and the United States Postal Service is not doing mail to Australia very easily right now because of a little thing called COVID-19. So this towel, instead of going to Caleb, who I picked yesterday, is going to go to Rachel on Twitter at rtrauber. I don't even know. RTRAUGHBERR at that. You win. Please DM me and I will send this to you. It looks like you live in Arizona, so I really hope that is much, much easier. But that's that. We'll give another towel away at 750 from the playoffs that I forgot that I had. So keep subscribing to YouTube, and that's the best way to make sure you are in the running, so you can eventually send me a screenshot proving that you're subscribed, and then you can get picked to get things from me for free. All right, Damon, how are you doing? How are you dealing with the other small market teams in the NBA melting down today? Portland, Indiana. It was a busy day, and it was nice to not have the Suns in the news for once.
The day of reckoning is here, and the Suns are safe.
Seems that
for
way.
now.
For now, yeah. We'll
investigation pending.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you might have heard there's this investigation going on, and someday the results will come out, and then we will have to deal with it. But for one day at least, the Suns were not the subject of that scrutiny. Where are you on this though? Because the Pacers obviously turned some heads. Justin Holiday's a guy I know. The nerdy Suns fans among us have wanted for a long time. He's sort of like Mikhail Bridges light in a lot of ways, and Torrey Craig is on that team. He just left the Suns. He could be a candidate they might want to bring back. Do you think the Suns should jump in on this? How seriously do you feel like they should take the fire sale that might be coming over in Indiana?
When it comes to Indiana, I tweeted about this earlier. There's going to be an arms race going on at the top of the West and at the top of the NBA overall. I think if you look at the assets that the Warriors have at their disposal, there's just no hope that Sabonis doesn't end up there if the Warriors put their mind to it. Put Kuminga, Moody on the table. I think they have another lottery pick in their stashes.
Yeah.
So you got to match that. And if that takes Torrey Craig or Justin Holiday or whatever it takes, you got to do something, I think.
Yeah, that's the weird sort of thing about the West this year is both the Suns and the Warriors do have the pieces to make a trade, although obviously the Warriors have many more pieces. So I think that you will see the Suns make a deal. I also think one thing that I maybe haven't talked about very much here, but is very much going to come into play, is there are about 7 days when most folks will be listening to this until most players in the league become available to be traded. A lot of the guys who would have signed contracts this past summer can then become tradable on December 15th. That date will be really important because I personally don't feel very comfortable that Frank Kaminsky or Abdul Nader are coming back anytime soon. The Suns clearly don't want to play Jalen Smith at all. And Ish Wainwright, as fun and interesting as he is on a limit on how many days he can even be here. So they need bodies. They need players. They need productive players, which Elfrid Payton has not been. So that trade might be coming sooner than I think people expect. But let's get to the main entree here for the day. Report cards. We'll start with, of course, Devin Booker, where we have to start. So what I did here, Damon, is I took 3 statistical sort of like nuggets from each of the players that we planned on talking about, the top 4 guys on this team. And I don't want to read them all, top to bottom. So I'll give the floor to you to start with Devin Booker. We are 20 games or so into the season for him, considering he has missed a few. What have you taken from his season? It's looked a little bit different than the past couple have for him, but obviously they've been winning at an insane clip, so it's hard to be too disappointed. What have you seen? What have you liked?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago we potted together and we talked about how Booker had a 6 rebound per game mark at that point, and that's down to like 4.9 now. So he's taken the gas off the rebounding a little bit, which I think is fine. Like, he's going to be awesome in just about every facet of the game, but statistically he's going to round back down to that 24, 4, and 4 kind of combo that he so steadily holds, it seems. But
yeah,
I mean, who's more dominant as a scorer right now than him? At least when he plays, of course.
No, I mean, the clinic that he put on in New York City right before he got hurt against the Warriors was about as good as it gets in terms of efficiency. He actually was mixing in the threes a little bit more, and that's been a trend all season. This is basically, I think if he can continue to do those things in terms of playmaking at a more efficient level, shooting at a more efficient level, and maintaining a lot of the other stuff that he's always done, maybe even getting that 2-point percentage a little higher than it was, you're probably looking at the best offensive season of his career when it's all said and done, if things hold that way. I've been using effective plus minus, which is over at dunksandthrees.com. And so that's I work some of those numbers in throughout just so folks are aware. It's just the same as the others, except it's the new trendy one that people seem to think is more accurate. So that's what I used. And he is at plus 2.9. It's sort of like net rating. It's like how much better or worse than average are you per 100 possessions in terms of what you do to your team, how much you affect your team when you're on the floor. So plus 3 basically for him. Most of that is coming, that's plus 3 on offense, plus 2.3 overall. So the vast majority of his value is coming on offense. The defense in some cases is negative. So that's something that interests me because, we're basically 2 seasons in now to the defense looking eye test wise and sort of from those of us who watch day to day a lot better, but the numbers really still don't show it. What do you make of his defense? Do you think that maybe we overreact to it because of the improvement and we kind of think, oh, he's gotten so much better, therefore he's good, when really maybe he's still just sort of average or below average? Do you think the numbers are missing something? Where do you see his defense right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's this common saying, better doesn't always mean good. And I think in his case, he probably went from like a 2 out of 10 on defense to probably like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. And then in like clutch one-on-one situations, he really ramps it up to like a 7 or 8 out of 10, I think. But as far as just his defense goes, I think you can't really complain given what he brings on offense. You mentioned that effective plus minus. I'm just curious, how does plus 2.3 kind of rank among, like, is that super high on the leaderboard?
It's not terribly high. Chris Paul, I believe, is top 10 in there, Mark. And actually Jay Crowder among Suns players has been really high for them all year and in most of those sort of all-encompassing metrics. But Booker on offense is in the 94th percentile. In overall, if EPM, he's in the 89th percentile. So, all-star level, but, maybe not all-NBA in terms of if you were to just take the top 15 players in the league. He's not quite there, but he's knocking on the door of it. The last number that I had was that the Suns have a plus 3.6 net rating differential when he's on the floor. So basically on versus off, he's adding 3.6 points per 100 possessions to the Suns' net rating when he's out there. And that's a flip from last year, because if you remember, basically Chris Paul and Devin Booker both were bad in that stat, because when they were on the court together for most of the season, it didn't look great statistically, and then they would just kill teams when one of them was on and one of them was off. So the fact that they've gelled really quickly together is not a surprise, but is now showing up in the stats in a bigger way. So that's good to see as well. I'll give the floor back to you, though, for your grade. What is your grade for Mr. Booker through these first 25 games?
I would say A-, and the minus is just because that hamstring that keeps coming up. I wonder if there's like a procedure that could be done on it in an off season that really fully repairs it, as opposed to just like this rest that he needs every now and then on it. So, yeah. But I mean, like, the playmaking has been beyond what it's been, and it's been a lot more mistake free. So I think that really gets him up there.
Yeah, I gave him an A. It's always hard. I don't know. I never know how much to factor injuries in, because obviously it's not the player's fault, but also if you're just kind of looking at the value they provided, you have to factor it in. So I went with an A. I think efficiency-wise, he could be a little bit better, and especially from 2-point range. And yeah, he's missed some games. The defense still isn't showing up as a big positive. So can't quite do the A+, but I will give him the A. We'll get to Deandre Ayton and Chris Paul next. A lot to talk about with DA. Has been a very, very fascinating first quarter for him. But first, a quick word from Calm. Do you want to know what makes LeBron James King James? Well, that is sleep. That's right. Sleep is LeBron's superpower. And Calm, the #1 app for sleep and meditation, has teamed up with LeBron James to help you activate the power of sleep. LeBron and Calm know that your mind is like any other muscle in your body, but you don't have to be a world champion to learn how to train it. Calm can help you train your brain so you sleep better, reduce your stress, and perform at your best, just like the king. For LeBron, sleep is a critical part of his mental fitness routine. As he says, getting good sleep and finding time to rest is one of the most valuable things I can do for my body and mind. From the sound of rain falling on leaves to bedtime sleep stories, Calm puts me to sleep within minutes, which means I wake up ready for any challenge. So if you head to calm.com/lockedonnba for a limited time, you'll get 40% off a Calm premium subscription. With Calm, you have access to the nature scenes that LeBron loves and so much more, like sleep stories and meditations, so you can be ready for any challenges that life throws your way. Again, for a limited time, our listeners can join LeBron in using Calm and get a 40% discount on a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/lockedonnba. Unlock content to help you focus, ease stress, and sleep better. Get started at calm.com/lockedonnba. That's all one word. That's calm.com/lockedonnba. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. That is Built Bar. Filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, and covered in chocolate, but most importantly, amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and packed in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle the holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in those endless lines, Built Bar can give you that something extra to keep you going. Are you friends with Santa? Wow, they want to know who's friends with Santa. I personally am not. I've never met the guy. But tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings if you love them like we do. They'd make anyone Christmas morning a happy one. Dip it into hot cocoa. Try it with a marshmallow. I feel like Built Bar s'mores might not even be a terrible idea. Just melt them down a little bit. Graham cracker, marshmallow. There's tons of ways to try it. There's tons of different flavors. You know the drill. Built.com. Promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 when you make your purchase to get a 15% off at Built.com. Okay, Deandre Ayton is up next here. I will give a couple of my data points here, Damon, to set the stage, things that jumped out to me. On the positive, which is what I want to start with to be courteous to the gentleman, 81% at the rim this season, which, like, he keeps getting better at that. Like, it was a couple of years ago, it's like, oh man, he's in the mid to high 60s at the rim. What an incredible number. Like that's what you wanted to see from him. And then last year, it's like, wow, he bumped it up. He's at like 70, 75%. That's elite. That's so crazy. And now he's at 81%, like almost literally getting to the point where outside of being blocked or having some sort of something happen, he's going to make the shot if he gets it off clean. It's pretty incredible to see. And it just continues to show, I think, like the excelling in his role thing that we've all come to see with him. What have you made of his season? I know we talked a lot about him last time you were on, but I think he's played a lot better since then.
Yeah, he's a pretty polarizing guy for me, as anyone who follows my takes knows. But I think for the most part, he's been better than I was expecting for this season. You mentioned the really nice touch at the rim. He's got like such a bag of these touch moves to finish at the rim. Like a lot of people are crying for the dunks still, and I am too every now and then, but like he's got this thing where no matter where he is in the paint, if he's in the paint, it's got a good shot of going in, regardless of what happens. And so that part has been really encouraging for me. It's just the like mid-range fadeaways and things like that where he's just settling for jumpers that still could use some work to me. But I think he's gonna settle into a nice spot for the season.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think of where he's at as a creator, because that's always been the thing with him. That was really where the spotlight was heading into the season on him was, can he develop a little bit more of that? And I don't think we've really seen it. I don't, I think the steps that we've seen have been incremental, but I don't really feel like you could possibly watch Deandre Ayton and feel like he's risen to another level. I don't think that that's really where we are. I think he's kind of doing more with what we've seen of him. He's maybe a little more accurate as a passer. Maybe he's a little bit more comfortable driving to the basket from the free throw line in. But when he has to put the ball on the ground, it's still not going well. You mentioned the mid-range jumper is still somewhat of a crutch for him. It's also, not terribly like he's not LaMarcus Aldridge out there, right? He's not like Karl Malone. He's not this incredible mid-range shooter. Like he's good at it, but he's not great at it. So do you think this is just sort of who he is? I mean, this is year 4. I think it's fair to start kind of just saying that, and that can be positive. It doesn't even have to be that it's like a criticism necessarily, because I think it's just maybe honest, like stop holding the guy to a standard that isn't fair.
Yeah, I think there's the holding him to a certain standard. I think there's a lot to that, because he really did set the standard for himself when he demanded the 5-year full max over the summer. Sure. And I think that creation is a really big part of that. You look at all the guys that have gotten those from his draft class, like Trey and Luka and Shea, like all of them can create for themselves. Even Michael Porter Jr. can create for himself, but like Ayton just has not shown an ability to do that consistently. He's had a few games recently where he's shown some flashes, and like against the Spurs, there was a play toward the end of the game when he catches the ball on a short roll, drives to the rim, and then kicks out to Crowder on the left wing for a 3. And it just like, it's the kind of play that gives you chills if you're wanting certain things out of Ayton. But like every now and then too, there will be games where he just disappears on that front. And so I'm curious if he ever brings consistency to that. And you mentioned maybe that's just who he is. I think that there's something to the fact that like Monty Williams wants Ayton during this period with Chris Paul and Devin Booker. He wants Ayton to be that play finisher, and they've slowly been expanding his role every year. And so I think that over time, he's asked to do more by the coaching staff, I think he'll step up a little bit. I just don't know that it's worthy of a max contract right now.
Sure. I think that's all fair. I think the passing is definitely a place where we have seen progress and growth on the short roll, at the elbow. That stuff, I think you can pretty clearly say has gotten better for him. Defensively, I want to bring up just quickly, we don't have to talk about it too much, because I think you look at some of the defensive metrics for the Suns as a team compared to individual players. And to me, it seems pretty clear that the metrics have a hard time tracking and gauging who's having a positive impact on the team defense, because like JaVale McGee, for instance, is a huge positive from an on-off perspective. And then I said a minute ago, Jay Crowder is a guy who, those sort of all-encompassing metrics really highly value. But like Mikhail and Deandre, they don't like as much compared to what, the reputation might be. And then Booker's always down, even when he's on this team that's so good. So I give that caveat before I say the defense so far this season for the Suns has been almost 9 points worse per 100 possessions when Deandre Ayton's on the floor. And that effective plus minus metric on the defensive end, he's behind guys like Christian Wood, Domantas Sabonis, Mason Plumlee. Like that metric just doesn't like him. So I'm not going to be the guy to say he's taken some massive step back just because those numbers I can cherry pick and show and wag them in front of you. But it is just worth considering when we're kind of looking holistically because, for instance, you don't have a lot of seasons where a Rudy Gobert tracks poorly in those types of numbers. These bona fide superstar defensive big men, those numbers always show them to be elite, right? And so it's just worth factoring in as we talk about this stuff. But all that said, my grade for Deandre Ayton is a B+. I think that he has brought that intensity and energy that we saw during the playoffs on most nights this season. I think he has flashed a higher ceiling. I think some of those things we talked about have been improvements from him pretty definitively. So not going to crack him into the A range, but I have him at a B+. Where are you?
I'm at a C+ for him. He just has too many games where he disappears. Like during the win streak, he had, there's one game against Minnesota where he was a -5 in a 3-point win. The second game against Dallas, he was -8 in an 8-point win. The 2 Spurs games ago, he was a -6 in a 4-point win. And so he's just got too many of those types of games to have me give him like a really good grade, I think.
That's fair. I don't think that I think that it's part of why I asked the question of if he is what he is, if the standard has to just be considered a little bit differently. But I think your point's well taken that if he's asking that we hold him to the standard of a max player, which is what he sees himself as, then I think there is a little bit of pressure to hold that standard a little bit higher. But I guess I maybe am a little bit more likely to just look at things in a vacuum in that kind of way and think, this season, what value is he providing relative to what I thought? And I think it's a little better, so I'll give him the B+. We'll get to Chris Paul after another break. I knew we would talk a lot about Ayton, so we'll take another quick moment before we hit the point god. But then, before then, we can hear from BetOnline.ag. Fastest and the easiest way to make a bet. BetOnline remains your number one spot for every single sport all year long. We're heading into 2022, and BetOnline has you covered for more props, odds, and lines than anyone else. So head to their new updated desktop site or their mobile app. Make an account today, and when you do, use the promo code LOCKEDON when you make your first deposit to get a 50% welcome bonus. That's promo code LOCKEDON when you make your first deposit to get a 50% welcome bonus straight to your account. From basketball, football, the NHL, boxing, UFC, even to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline remains the, again, fastest and easiest way to make a bet. BetOnline, where the game starts. Chris Paul this season has been awesome to watch. I feel like is a fun and reasonable place to start here, Damon. I've talked a lot about Chris Paul. I just got done recapping that Spurs game and dedicated a whole segment to him. So I will let you start us off here. What has stood out to you? What has impressed you, disappointed you about Mr. Paul through the first 20 or so games?
Yeah, I mean, he's the point guard. He knows exactly when to come in and just kill off any sort of hope for the other team. He knows exactly how to get the Suns through their sets, and he does it pretty flawlessly most of the time. And so I can't really pick too many nits with him. I think the steals are making up for anything he's giving up in like one-on-one defensive situations where he might get blown by just in his age. But I really can't pick too many nits with him. He's been really great.
Yeah, he's been incredible. His assist rate is the highest since his last Clippers season right now, and those clutch numbers, David Nash had it. I believe that Paul is 11 of 17 on field goals in clutch time this season, and his net rating is plus 59.4. I found today looking around 77%. It's ridiculous. 77% true shooting in the clutch. Like, this guy has always had this reputation, but I think is being even more surgical and finally has a team like a basketball IQ team. I think is really what separates this group on the Suns from the other teams that he's had in the past, is that at any time, for the most part, when they're closing a game, everybody on the floor is like in the top tier of basketball IQ in the NBA. So he's just able to really only do what he has to do. And it's been awesome to watch, like you said. My grade's an A+, because again, like you said, I can't really find a nit to pick. He's been better than I expected on defense, even if the sum of what he's able to provide at his age at this point is a little bit higher, is a little bit lower than his peak. It's fine. It's still better than I thought it would be. And then the offense has been incredible, and he's been the single reason that they've won like 5 games already.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with an A, simply for the fact that I don't think you can ever truly not have room to improve. I think that.
So wait, hold on. Did Nikola Jokic get an A+ for the season last year, or do you only give him an A? Where is the line? Does nobody get an A+?
Probably not.
Wow.
I think Giannis in the finals gets an A+.
It's a good thing you want to go into media and not teaching, because I would not really enjoy being your student in that case, if I'm being honest with you. But okay, an A. An A. You want Chris Paul, the Hall of Fame point god, to continue to improve. I'll deliver that message the next time that I see him. I'll say, Damon thinks you have more room in there for development. Really work on your game.
And I think he would agree with that. I think that he would totally say that he has things he could do better. And
he probably would.
It's just things like there are some opportunities where he can score a bit more in the first 3 quarters, I think. I think he defers a little bit too much in those
The number of games where he's had single-digit shot attempts in the first half, it's like literally almost every night at this point. He doesn't even crack 10 field goal attempts until the fourth quarter.
And I know why he does it. I'm sure that's not how it's going to be in the playoffs, but that's the thing keeping it from a plus for me, if I had to pick one thing.
That's fair. Mikal Bridges is up next here. A few numbers on him. I really tried to dig a little deeper. 17th toughest defensive matchup difficulty. So that's something that Basketball B-Ball Index looks at in terms of the level of competition, the level of opponent, like man-to-man, that a defender is guarding on a consistent basis. So Mikal has accumulated the 17th toughest matchup difficulty so far. David Nash had this one as well on Twitter recently, that Bridges has covered the most ground on defense in the NBA so far this season. That matches the eye test for sure. That, combined with that defensive matchup difficulty, shows the level of performance that he's had on the defensive end, even though, as I said, the on-off, some of the all-in-one metrics don't really show that his defense has been super-duper elite like we all know it has been. And then lastly, transition. The Suns have a plus 14.6 net rating differential in transition when Mikal is on the floor this season. So when he's out there, they're a machine on the fast break, turning defense into offense, executing when the ball and the pace are really moving. Less so when he's not out there. So you're rarely going to see one area of the game where one player makes such a big impact. But I thought that painted a pretty obvious picture of the type of player he's been this season. What stood out to you, though?
Yeah, you're going to hate me for this, but when the first thing that came to my mind when you said Mikhail Bridges, and this isn't the grade I'm going to give him, but the first thing that popped into my head was A+.
No, nobody.
He's
nobody.
Not going to get it.
Unless you drop 50 in a game 6, then it's not. You don't get it. I've been told this.
Yeah, but he's just been incredible. There have been stretches where if the Suns are ever going through like a lull for a quarter or two, or like during that last Golden State game where it's just a blowout for a lot of that second half, I kind of just resort to, well, let me take a breather and just watch nothing but Mikal, because I feel like every time I look at him, he's doing something I love. And there are just not too many guys that you can say that about. Chris Paul's talked about Mikal's consistency And I think that anyone can see it if you just look at him. He brings it every play. He's always doing something smart and trying hard, and I just really appreciate that about him. I think he could stand to be a little bit more aggressive on the offensive end, but I mean, just picking nits at that point.
Yeah, no, I think the covering ground stat, I think the reason that David was so excited to like put that out there, and the reason that I think Suns fans reacted to it the way that I saw them doing on Twitter so much is because it kind of is the perfect thing to sum up for a player who can be so difficult to measure his impact. I think that is one where you really see it. And of course, there's plenty of guys who run around like, chickens with their heads off that stat would be meaningless about. But for him, we know that that's a huge part of why he is so great. And that said, I do just feel like there has to be some level of, like I have been saying, I tend to do these grades from the perspective comparing it relative to my expectations. And I did come into this season really hoping that Bridges could handle a little bit more, handle the ball a little bit more, be a little bit more aggressive with getting his own shot. Now, I've come around on that a little bit, and I've been willing to say that, maybe we were looking at the wrong things to measure what a breakout for him would look like. I think he's often the third best player on this team in a lot of games, sometimes fourth, sometimes fifth, sometimes second. But that versatility is unique and is great, but also I did think the offense would come along. It hasn't necessarily. He's largely the same type of player on offense that he was in years past. So with that all said, I gave him an A-. What was your grade?
I'm going to give him an A- as well.
Okay.
I did a quick piece for Roll Call a little while back where I was talking about lineups I want to see more of from each Western Conference team. And the one I picked for the Suns was essentially Mikhail Bridges with the bench unit. And the reason I picked that was because I wanted to see Mikhail get the keys a little bit more. And even when those lineups happen, he just isn't taking the reins the way I'd hoped. And it's kind of been the campaign show, much to a fault at this point. But that's where we stand. So he's an A- for me.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. We have about a minute or two to do one more player. I'll let you pick anyone else. Coach, GM. You could do Brian Randall. You could do Jarrett Jack. You could do Robert Sarver. You could do Larry Fitzgerald. Who do you want to do here for our last spot on our report card?
Let's do Monty.
Okay.
Coach.
What do you got for us? What stands out to you about the head coach of the Suns here through the first quarter of the season?
Yeah, I mean, for a team that's 19-4 or 20-4 now,
20.
You can't really hate on him too much. The one thing I would say is those lineups, like I was just talking about with Mikhail and the bench guys, I would like to see a little bit more creativity from him, but that's never been his MO. He's always been the who gives me the best chance to succeed kind of guy, and so that kind of lends itself to a bit less creativity. So I understand why it doesn't happen as much as I'd like, but, I really like what he's done. They're obviously running great sets, and the whole team is on the same page 90% of the time. So,
yeah, I'll give one big positive and one big, I don't even want to call it a negative, but maybe an exclamation mark and a question mark here. I'll say we all know a lot of the, he's a brilliant tactician. He's lost a lot of staff and is still calling these types of plays and developing a system that's maximizing its talent. So I think at a certain point, it couldn't be more obvious that it's him. That's the difference. Like almost all of his assistants from when he first started are gone, and yet that's still happening. So I think the key there is, okay, it's Monty Williams. But the big exclamation mark thing is him holding this team down and keeping them focused at a time when the entire world was falling apart in that organization and still is, and to go on a 20-game winning streak. Like, yes, the players have to execute. Yes, the schedule helped them out, on and on and on. But that's huge. I mean, and that really speaks more than almost anything, I think, aside from maybe what they did in the bubble, to the level of culture that he's already built here. The question mark, though, and I think the number one thing that I'm it's not going to be knowable until the Suns finish their season, whenever that happens, is Monty's making a bet this season that what happened in the finals didn't require very much of a change structurally to what they are as a team. And they don't look that different. Now, are they better? Yes. I think they've definitely taken a step forward. I think individual players have, and I think as a collective, they've kind of mind melded to an extent that they're looking really incredible together. But he went into this season thinking what happened against the Bucks, what happened in different matchups that we saw throughout the season can be fixed by getting better at what we already are. And that's a bet. It is a risk. I don't think that it's necessarily there was a great other option. I don't think that ruining the whole roster just to try something different was very smart, but it is what he chose to do. And they haven't looked like they're really trying to be all that different as a team, just little things on the margin. So I'll give Monty an A+. I don't feel like you can give him anything less than that, but just something to watch. I will, before we close out, Larry Fitzgerald gets a big ol' F. First of all, retire or don't. Second of all, don't sign your name to the statement. Okay, that's it. Had to. I brought up Larry Fitzgerald and then I had to say it. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna get on the bandwagon that Aaron Edwards said on this show, which is, how do you feel about this, Damon? Barry Bonds as co-owner. He went to ASU. Let's bring him back. I like that. I like that as an option.
What about our guy John? He gets an A+, right, for his statement?
Well, of course. No, he's probably the front runner, right? But you kind of want the face, you want the sexy partner. So John Bonds, it's kind of like the ticket on the presidential ballot, 2022,
John Bonds,
I guess.
Yeah.
But yes, that's where we are. You can read him at Bright Side of the Sun. You can follow him on Twitter at, what is it again? I am Damon Allred. Yes,
I sure am.
Correct. Follow him there on Twitter and enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow with Dwayne Rankin talking more Sun stuff, this weird break between games. We'll keep plugging right along. Talk to you then.